Well, I am Pops, and yes, Spawn intros mean we're going to talk about Spawn. So let's return to Gunslinger Spawn. If you haven't seen my videos, if you're not reading the comic, let me just say so far, you have three issue stories. You have one, two, and three, which is one little story, then four, five, six, dealt with the clown, by the way, Violator. And now we're going to pick up with issues 7 through 10. And I hate to call them filler, but in the same vein, they're not necessarily integral in really moving the plot or changing Javier or making the universe kind of like really grow. We've added a couple of sort of villains or creatures and things like that that are sort of like foils in the grand scheme of the Gunslinger Spawn version of this sort of universe, but not necessarily in a dynamic way or anything like that. Like it's all great. I'm not going to complain. Like I said, you can see it there. It's like can it be filler and still great? Yes, absolutely it can. And was it awesome to get Billy Kincaid and this concept of overkill, and then to see the clown come back? It was awesome. And now we're seeing Gunslinger Spawn sort of kind of get his own dynamics. We got introduced to Dakota back in issue 3 and kind of having this antagonist that was from the past, but really, with the way she brought dinosaurs to the game. And now with issue 7, you see the first look here of Carnivore. It's like werewolves, right? It's like a werewolf is introduced. And the art, Brian Booth is bringing just an incredible art and communication of story through his design with McFarlane telling the story. It's just, it really, really is epic. And you do get just an incredible look. We have ties into actual Spawn that start right out of the gate. So everything between 7 and 10, it's a lot about um, Gunslinger Spawn's relationship with Priest, the she Spawn, her trying to recruit and bring Gunslinger in with Al Simmons's group. He's trying to put together his quote Spawn team, if you will, dealing with more of an existential threat. And that is also part of it as well. And there's a couple hurdles and things like that along the way. But as you can see, there's also just beautiful, beautiful stuff. Like this is the dynamic of threats that come Javier's way is just really incredible. Like I just love the details in the scene. There's so much action that's happening in the art through all of it, and that the issues move very, very quickly. And Gunslinger has been presented along the way as being one of the weaker Spawn, but at the same time there's something very interesting that we start to learn in these issues. And here you start to see just literally like the beauty of 90s comic books coming to life in this sort of like story arc, right? Because you get not only creatures and actions and fight scenes, you also get Priest, who looks just super beautiful. And then even when Gunslinger is struggling, you start to see that he is also very cunning and smart and strategic. The backstory deals with, an execution that he kind of is in a wrong place, wrong time situation with a Spawn that shows up at the Old West, and he witnesses an unarmed man getting blasted, and he's having this nightmare about Amy, and Amy turns out to be his sister, not a love interest. So it's not interesting because it's just some superficial thing. It's something that cuts all the way deep to his core. And he partners with She-Spawn, and then he's trying to get the help from Al Simmons, the real Spawn, to get back to his time. He's got unfinished business. Spawn needs him, and even though he's considered a weaker one, he's not necessarily in the dynamic of this. And right out of the gate, when he does meet with Spawn Al Simmons, who's torturing someone for information, there on the top left, he just goes along and executes everybody. And you see what Spawn really is like with the wings and the hell. You see the real hell Spawn come alive. And like I said, there's not a ton of rich story as much as there is a fun experience and read with their interactions and how they kind of go at one another, right? Because then it's not that they really do respect one another. Like, gosh, look at the art on this. Oh my gosh, it's so crazy. Um, but you start to see they kind of have to use one another. Like he barely even kind of understands some of the bickering and some of the things that are going on as he's kind of brought into this loop. And it's played for almost like comic relief because he's in the room and they pull up these screens. And I want to highlight the screens because this is the brilliance of what stories used to do. And this issue is going to be the cameo of future Spawn, in my opinion, because you get different dynamics on these screens. Like Terry is there monitoring different spawns, and you have these different versions that are going to show up, including as a T-Rex spawn. You know, you see the different versions here that are armored up and ninja'd up and that kind of thing. With these different versions of Spawn will have their names and come to light at some point or another in really interesting and cool ways. I mean, I love this one. It looks almost like an Ultron hybrid. Uh, very, very interesting dynamic and design. And then when you have a quick cut back to the story, that the overarching story, right? So going back to issues 1, 2, and 3, and you have this sort of angel, right? Cyrus. The thirst and the need to get a hold of Gunslinger Spawn for their reason comes into play. And you have this person that has been injured by Spawn, who's been wronged by Gunslinger. And he's kind of thrown into the mix, and then he transforms into this. And I was reminded of like Stephen Platt and Dale Keown and these type of artists that really went deep into their design and detail. And that's what Brian Booth is bringing. And then Gunslinger doesn't exactly play it right, play it straight, and take him to where he says he's going to, because he really wants to try to figure out how to elevate himself to be on more equal ground with Spawn. And you sort of have the Al Simmons versus one another to a draw. And then, of course, they have an agreement and a pact. And then they come in contact with, this angel. Now, I will say the biggest flaw in all of this is it sort of wraps up. You don't get a lot of stuff is done off panel, but we have an agreement. It's like, well, we don't really understand all the details. It was very cheap. I didn't care for that, right? They have come to an agreement. They've kind of got their place. And it's like, we're going to go after this enemy that's in Russia. And Gunslinger doesn't know what Russia is. He comes from the Old West, right? So it's designed more as filler and set up to bring Gunslinger to Spawn, have She Spawn as a liaison, have a couple of conflicts and reasons to have some action and some things like that, introduce a villain, maybe have some cameo type stuff, but it's really to get us to Scorched #1. So is it filler? Sure. But can it be fun? Absolutely. Is it beautiful and 90s and art? The Brian Booth art, Brett Booth art is just, it's off the chain. Great. I'm having a blast. It's a fun read still. I'm still really enjoying it. I'm trying to figure out how am I going to balance another title and everything else. But hey, I'm in it to win it if it's good stuff. And I think that's kind of where we're at as far as fans go and what we're enjoying. I hope you're enjoying it. If you're enjoying this, let me know. If there are other comics that you're reading that you enjoy, I'd love to hear about that as well. And I want to just thank you again for watching. I am Pops.